Suppose you're religious, and you have a lot of beliefs tied to that religion that are unique to that religion. But even if you're taking things on faith, at what point would you ever admit, you know what, that doesn't make any sense? Philosopher John Loftus has a great suggestion for how we ought to assess these beliefs. He calls it the outsider test for faith. It's not a new idea by any means, but here's how it works. You test your beliefs as if you're an outsider who's not familiar with them. In other words, if you had never heard of the virgin birth before, what would your reaction be if I told you all about it? If you weren't raised in the Catholic Church, would you believe that a communion wafer could literally become the body of Christ? A lot of us in the United States might laugh off the idea of Muhammad flying to heaven on a winged horse. But why do we dismiss that idea and not the stories that are most familiar to us? You could do this with any faith-based idea. Adam and Eve, the resurrection of Jesus, the flying spaghetti monster blessing you with his noodly appendage. Doesn't matter. The fact is, most people dismiss most other holy books and beliefs for reasons they never apply to their own. And often, they just use a blanket dismissal. I don't believe what the Quran says because it's the Quran. It's not like they've actually read it. But if they have legitimate reasons for not taking those other books seriously, the logical follow-up question ought to be, why is it any different when someone else says the same thing about your book? Why are other people wrong to dismiss your beliefs? It's easy to believe nonsense when you're surrounded by family and friends who believe the same nonsense. That's why if you live in the Bible Belt, you probably think the stories in the Bible are accurate, maybe even literally so. And it's why if you grew up in Saudi Arabia, you probably accept the truth of Islam. Maybe your religious views have less to do with explaining reality and more to do with the family and culture in which you grew up. And it's a lot harder defending those ideas when outsiders start asking you about them. And if you don't have convincing answers beyond, it's my faith, it's just what I believe, then why are you still clinging to those beliefs? There's a wonderful line you may have heard, and I don't know who said it, so I'll paraphrase it here. I contend that we are both atheists. I just believe in one fewer God than you do. And when you understand why you dismiss all those other gods, you'll understand why I dismiss yours. By the way, this outsider test is exactly why I think atheism is so powerful. It doesn't involve any made-up stories. You don't have to take anything on faith. Yeah, there are things we don't know the answers to, but we're willing to admit when that's the case. Think about this for a second. Let's say you were never exposed to all the various religions out there, and they were just lined up for you in a row. Group A believes God poofed us into existence, and because a woman ate a fruit that she wasn't supposed to, now we're all sinners, and we're screwed, unless we accept the divinity of God's Son, whom he killed as a sacrifice because he loves us. Group B believes that most of what Group A believes is a myth, but they still believe in miracles, and they still believe that God is listening to our prayers, and that God is watching over us. Group C believes that when we die, we get reincarnated into a different body. Group D believes that God doesn't want you to work on Saturdays. And Group E believes that God doesn't want you to eat pork. The other meats are pretty cool though. If these stories were unfamiliar to you, you would think they were all ridiculous. But just because everyone around you accepts one of those stories or some different one, it doesn't mean you should. Examine your beliefs as if you were someone who has never heard them before. And if you do that, I promise you the religious myths will fade away fast. My name is Hemant Mehta, and I write at friendlyatheist.com. What do you want to see a video about? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to check it out. And don't forget to subscribe.